Hello, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining us.
Good evening, good morning.
We are both very excited to have you here today and to be sharing this very important conversation and discussion around gaslighting. It's such a topical thing at the moment, well, particularly in the last couple of years. Gaslighting has, the word itself, been a lot more prominent in our language. So Dawnelle and I thought it would be quite relevant to share our insights and information and tips on gaslighting. So here we are today. So firstly, I want to share with you a bit about gaslighting and, well, a lot about gaslighting. We'll go through a number of things today. So we'll share our tips, our experiences, what gaslighting actually is, and how to stop it. So have you ever found yourself questioning your own beliefs or opinions? That if your point of view doesn't match theirs, then it's simply wrong. So if you feel like that, you've been through that experience, that is gaslighting. It's just one of the many examples that is gaslighting. So let us know if that has been your experience. This is just one of the many examples that is gaslighting. For far too long, we have ignored these seemingly small indicators of gaslighting. When it comes to a simple question, you might not think it means too much, but when all of these small little questions pop up and it becomes a reoccurring pattern, gaslighting does have a big impact on your mental health. So all of these gaslighting indicators, they all mount up into a huge problem on your mental health, where you might start to think there is a problem. However, the problem has been happening for such a long time. And when this happens, you may have stopped listening to your intuition, or perhaps you've felt like it's too much effort question this, especially after it's been happening for a while. Well, at least that's how I felt anyway. It was just too much. I didn't want to cross him. I didn't want to feel like, you know, my point of view might be wrong. So I just didn't even go there and question that. I have found that by giving yourself space, as soon as you feel like this question is dropped or your beliefs are questioned, just give yourself space to consider the conflicting statement. By knowing your values and setting clear boundaries with these, you can eradicate gaslighting from your life. So it's simply not worth losing your own self-worth, your mind, yourself to these perpetrators for their own guilty pleasure. By knowing your values, you are able to stand up against them. And it may take a number of examples of gaslighting for you to realize what's happening. But it's important to recognize this and to be aware. That's why we have this session, to help you recognize what the red flags are and what to do about it. So welcome everyone to our gaslighting session today. I would like to let you know that there will be an opportunity for audience participation in about 10 minutes. So stick around and you're welcome to provide some examples if you're watching the replay, it would be great if you could leave a comment and share your example that way. What's your experience with gaslighting? What's your story with gaslighting? So let us know, and it'll be wonderful for you to share your experience to not only liberate yourself, but also so other people can understand. Because when you're in the thick of it, it is hard to see and it is hard to recognize. So as many examples as we can will help others to actually understand, and they might be able to resonate and relate with one tiny example that you might feel isn't even relevant, but it really lands with someone and it helps them to understand. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce my wonderful co-host. Her name is Dawnelle Davis from all the way across a couple of seas in America. Dawnelle is a survivor and overcomer of domestic violence. She is a mother of 3, 2 teenage boys, and a beautiful 4-year-old girl. She spent 16 years in a manipulative, controlling marriage. In her unhappiness, she turned to other men to fill a void in her life. She got caught in her transgressions and the physical abuse began. Through a physical domestic altercation, her story ends in tragedy, where her children witnessed their father taking his own life. Over the past 3 years, Dawnelle has been on a journey of healing from guilt, shame, low self-esteem, and lack of confidence. Dawnelle has successfully completed the healing program, the mindset and empowerment program, and is now being a mentor through the Freedom Mentor. She has discovered her passion for connecting with people and coaching them through this journey, just as she has experienced. She now helps people recover through working on their traumas, their low self-esteem, as she's going through the Become a Mentor program. She helps people as they go through healing from unhealthy environments, wanting freedom in their life, who are lost and who don't know their purpose, to heal and to find clarity. She also has an incredible blog that you should check out. Welcome, Dawnelle.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Good evening, good morning, everyone, wherever you are in the world, wherever you might be checking in on a replay. Thank you for welcoming me, Amy. Yeah, let me go ahead and introduce my co-host, Amy Hill. So Amy is also a domestic violence survivor and mentor. Excuse me. And I've gotten out of place, sorry. And she's also the author of My Life on Eggshells and a speaker. After 10 years of her own domestic violence experience, falling to the depths beyond belief, losing her house, career, and self-worth, Amy rose above the despair to truly discover herself and her freedom. Following this discovery, she felt inspired to share this and help other survivors of domestic violence, abuse, trauma, and narcissism. Amy founded the Freedom Mentor, where she facilitates healing and empowerment programs to clients globally. Her clients have had life-changing shifts and breakthroughs while feeling more connected with themselves than ever before. Through many platforms, Amy has helped educate and raise awareness of domestic violence, inspire empowerment, and mindset tips. Amy's growth and depth is evident, shown by her authenticity, personable, happy, and calm nature. She has dedicated her life to connect to and help other survivors to expedite their healing journey. She balances her days with a deep connection to yoga and meditation, along with her partner, who together have 4 children, 2 fridges, and a healthy addiction to coffee. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Dawnelle. Thank you. Definitely need all the fridges and coffee we can. Thank you very much.
So let's go ahead and move on to the definition and facts and information on gaslighting. So I'm going to start with the definition. So what is gaslighting? Amy had explained what it was at the beginning of the webinar, but let's go a little bit more in depth. So it's a type of psychological abuse, which that means it's hard to see. It's not something that's physical. It doesn't leave scars that other people can see, but it does leave mental scars. The tactic of power and control used to confuse and manipulate someone and have them question their own reality. It involves the abuser denying a survivor's memory of an event, questioning their perception of reality, and accusing the survivor of going crazy, or they're insane, or their opinion is wrong, or they're thinking totally the wrong way. There's only one way of thought. That's one of my experiences. I was always told there's only one way of thinking, when we all know that's not the reality. Abusers rely on gaslighting to convince survivors of any number of things that are or aren't happening as a means of control. So with many forms of abuse, whether it's physical or psychological, the ultimate goal is for the abuser to have control over what you do, what you say, how you dress, where you go, pretty much control over all that they can get. Gaslighting can overlap with other types of abuse. So as I mentioned, it can overlap with physical abuse. It can be along with verbal abuse, emotional, sexual, or financial abuse. So now you're wondering probably, what are the warning signs? What should you look for? So a lot of times you'll have confusion. The abuser will pretend that they don't know what the survivor is saying. Like, you could have talked about something maybe 10 minutes ago, and now it's a totally different story. Over apologizing, you should look for. Survivors will continually over apologize for things that they know are out of character. Questioning, assert you aren't remembering this correctly. They can keep telling you, well, I don't think you're remembering that quite right. Lies. Your family has never been kind, for example. Things that aren't true about maybe how you're keeping your finances or keeping your household. And then also there's diversion. Change the subject or change their behavior so that it covers up what they're actually doing. And then trivializing. Too sensitive about this. You don't know what you're talking about here. Forgetfulness. Abuser forgets the sequence of events. So all of these things build up and they kind of cloud your perception. They cloud the perception of yourself. They cloud the perception of what you think, and ultimately they allow the other person to have control over you. You can control your mental awareness and your mental health. So let's look at some statistics. 3 out of 4 adults don't know what gaslighting is. And 29% of them have heard of the term, but don't understand the definition. There's so many different examples, as Amy had mentioned. There's so many different examples little situations that actually are gaslighting, and you may not realize it. And 33% of women say they have been called crazy or insane or feel like they're just in a cloud. Those are some pretty amazing statistics. It's amazing that gaslighting is can be in all forms and in all places. It doesn't just have to be in a relationship. It can be in a relationship at work. It can be with friends. It's just a form of getting control over someone else. So I think that is the end of that section.
Maybe can just I think I could give an example for pretty much everything that you said.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could go on forever with examples, but I won't. And I found those statistics so interesting. Like 29% have heard gaslighting, but they don't know what it is. And the other one you said 3 out of 4. Like it's just incredible, and that's why it's so important to be having these conversations, to actually raise the awareness. Because if you understand what gaslighting is, because it can be so hard to understand and see it for yourself, especially when you're in it. When you're more third party, it can be easier to pick up. So that's why it's so important to understand it and have the awareness. I wonder if we ask some questions around this to kind of get people thinking if it's happening to them. So like I know we shared earlier, and I like your first question on this, Dawnelle, because it relates to the title of my book.
Yes, you always feel like you are walking on eggshells and afraid to speak up.
Yeah, I really like that one. So I'm just gonna pop that one into the chat. Yeah, do you always feel like you're walking on eggshells? So my title of my book is My Life on Eggshells, because that is exactly how I felt. Like I was so hyper vigilant, and I didn't know like what to think or what's true. So I definitely found that very relevant. So if you feel like that's happened to you, let us know, like pop it in the comments. Is this your truth? Is this what's happening to you?
Mm-hmm.
I think another one that we spoke about was, and again, this happened to me, like, do you feel like you're being isolated from your family and friends? That certainly happened to me, and it can be a sign that you are experiencing gaslighting, because exactly what Dawnelle was talking about, it's all about control. So they are able to have more control over you when you're isolated from your friends and family, because if you have friends and family in the picture, then they can help you untangle those mind games. So I think, that is definitely a good indication that you might be experiencing gaslighting. So again, do you feel like you're being isolated from friends and family? Let us know if this is happening to you.
Mm-hmm. And I think the last one that we talked about, are you afraid to share your opinion on things for fear you'll be told that's the wrong thought? And I shared kind of briefly that was my experience, what seemed to be a good amount of the time in my marriage. I can remember one little situation, which seems kind of funny now, but it was simply about putting up curtains. and it just wasn't the pattern that he liked. And he goes, "Oh, well, that just doesn't look good. There's only one thing that can go there." Or I remember a couple other situations where I was explaining how I felt, And the answer was, well, there's only one way of thinking.
Yeah.
And in my confusion, I'm thinking to myself, like, this doesn't make sense. But I've been in that pattern for so long that I start to question my own sanity.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
And it can be as simple as the curtains. Like it sounds simple, but it's not. Like it's all a pattern of, you questioning themselves and them having control.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, let us know. Are you afraid to share your opinion on things for fear that you'll be told that it's simply wrong? So let us know if this is happening to you. Please share so other people can help to understand as well. So we would like to open it up if anybody else would like to share their experience, share a story or example. If anyone else would like to share, you're welcome to jump on and share an example or story with us. And once we are done with that, we will go through and share our story as well. So we've both got, we've shared a couple of examples already, just as we've been going. But I think, it's important to share as much as we can so other people can, like I said before, it can be about the curtains. Like there's so many examples and there's very high chance that you might not even realize that you're being gaslit. So I guess my example that I would like to share, there's two actually. An example of gaslighting is also shifting the blame to avoid accountability. So this is a very common example of gaslighting. So shifting the blame to avoid accountability for the perpetrator, of course. The example that I give in my keynote speech is it's on coercive control, but like Dawnelle said, gaslighting is so frequent in so many forms of domestic violence. It's generally the underpinning factor that ends up with domestic violence. So shifting the blame to avoid accountability. For example, I remember when I was with my ex-husband, we had a bill to pay, whatever it was, a phone bill or something. And he came over to me and he got right up in my face and he had hands going everywhere saying, "Why didn't you pay this bill? Great, now we're going to have a late fee." And he was furious. He was furious. And I was like shocked for the rage, but also because I swear he didn't ask me to pay that bill. So I was like just in a moment of shock. And I was like thinking to myself, well, you didn't even ask me to pay that bill. Like, and I didn't say this because I was so shocked by what just happened. And I just sat there like frozen thinking, like, you didn't ask me, like, why are you so like raging about this? And then I thought, he had so much conviction in his voice. He really thought that he asked me to pay that bill, potentially, or he's just putting it on me. But either way, due to his conviction and his rage, it made me think, well, maybe he did ask me to pay that bill. Oh, now I feel bad. And I'm left questioning myself. So he's shifting the blame to avoid accountability. and I'm left questioning myself, feeling bad. That's gaslighting. Another example that I would like to share was one night when he had been drinking. He was quite drunk. I locked myself inside the house because he was raging and he was quite drunk. So I locked myself in there to protect myself. He's I don't know where his keys were, but he couldn't get into the house. So he then punched a hole through a glass window with his fist, broke the glass window, cut his whole fist, and got in to unlock the door with his hand and came into the house. So, I mean, yeah, it was scary at the time, of course, but he, get this right, he then turned around and blamed me. It was my fault that he needed to get stitches in his hand. So he punched a hole through a glass window because he was drunk and couldn't find his keys. But it was my fault he had to get stitches in his hand. So, and he made me feel bad that, you know, he was in pain and it's all my fault. But that's the epitome of gaslighting. So I guess, like, leading on from that, another example is like when he would get in these rages and when he would be so drunk, he would just outright deny facts. Like the next morning he would say, oh, but I only had one drink. It's like, no, that's like outright denial. Like that was not one drink that made you end up like that.
Wow.
So
that is gaslighting at the heart of it. It's the shifting the blame, to not take the accountability, it's making the other person feel bad, sad, mad, upset. Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry you had to go through those things, Amy, but you've come out on the other side.
Yeah, here we are.
Yes. So yeah, I shared a few stories. I could probably think of many more stories of things that just seemed out of place. But it wasn't until I started seeing a counselor, still while I was even in my marriage, that I started to see things. And even going to see the counselor was something, because I always got the question, well, what are you going to say in there? Like, well, I don't know. It was, and so I just never went to counseling for a long time, until I finally I was away from my family, I was away from my friends, and I decided that I was going to go to counseling and figure out what's going on here, what's happening, what are my next steps, how do I make those next steps? Because when you're in a domestic violence relationship and you're under any emotional or psychological abuse, you cannot see the other side. You don't know what your next step is. You don't believe that you can do it. So,
yeah, and that's where it all starts. It starts with gaslighting, and you know, if you don't get onto it early, it can just absorb your life and end up like you're living a shell of a person, and years go by. So it's really important to be aware. And everything happens for a reason. Dawnelle and I, like, we went through these things, but here we are today sharing with you our experience so you can resonate with it, so you can understand what gaslighting is. Thank you, Dawnelle. I really appreciate you sharing your insights, and I totally agree. Like, I had the same experience. Like, when I went to see a psychologist and she said, like, this is domestic violence. I'm like, what? I was just in disbelief. But yeah, that's, and that's all the gaslighting that we went through. Like, you just can't see it. Like, it was very difficult to see unless you're aware, like, what gaslighting is. It's difficult to see when you're in it. So I wanted to share, if you feel like, sorry, were you going to share anything else, Dawnelle?
No, I was just going to say, I think that Amy might have some tips to overcome gaslighting, or at least make yourself aware of when you're in it, so that you can take that step back and maybe get out sooner, or never even get into it to begin with.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so if you feel like you're being gaslit, and you're wondering, well, how exactly do I stop this? Like, I think this might be happening to me. And it doesn't have to be just with an intimate partner. It can be perhaps from family, or from a boss, or work colleagues, or a friend. Gaslighting is very common in any relationship. So if you feel like this is happening to you, you can actually stop gaslighting. Like, that is the good news here. You can do something about it. So what I would love for you to do, if you're joining us for the replay, I would love for you to get out a pen and paper and write these things down, because this will help you. You're in this situation, this is the answer. So write these down. I've got 3 tips for you. The first one, use your voice. Stand up to them for what you believe to be true. Don't be afraid to question them. And this is when I'm talking about earlier, give yourself space. So it might take a bit of courage when you work out that you're being gaslit and you're trying to figure it out. And then one clear example lands about the curtains. One clear example of gaslighting lands for you, and you recognize what it is. Give yourself space. If it's the first time you're recognizing it, give yourself space and just be like, well, hang on, like, this doesn't sit right with me. You don't have to stand up right then and there, of course, like, encourage you to do so. But if this is your first time recognizing it, give yourself space and come back. You can always come back. It's empowering to stand up for yourself. Take back your power. This is where you can. And it takes courage to understand gaslighting, have the awareness, but it takes courage to do something about it. To really stand up for yourself, use your voice, just by simply using your voice, voicing what you believe to be true, standing up for your values. This is where you get your power back. And then if you do this again and again and again, you become more empowered and they become disempowered. Yes, they will most likely be frustrated, but what's the expense? It's your self-worth. Stand up for yourself. So that's the first point. The second point is seek help from a therapist. If you feel like you've been gaslit, or like it's currently happening to you or it has happened in the past, I encourage you to seek help from a therapist, counselor, psychologist. It doesn't matter how little or how big the gaslighting might be. It's because it's psychological. Gaslighting is not you getting, a broken arm. You can't see it. Gaslighting is psychological. So therefore, you're encouraged to talk about it, particularly with a professional who understands gaslighting, who can help you understand gaslighting. So by talking to a professional about it, then they will obviously have their unbiased view. So you're not just talking to friends and family, which can be great to talk about anyway, but the therapist has their unbiased view and they can help educate you so it doesn't happen again. They can break it down so you can see what's happening and help build your self-worth again, to ensure that gaslighting is eliminated from your life. So it's really important to seek help. So the third thing I want you to write down is know your values. This is really important. So if you know what your values are, then when you feel like you're questioning yourself, like you're second guessing yourself and you're not sure what is true, you can rely on your values. So you can always check in and see if these values are being compromised. Stand up for your values, for what you know is true. Set boundaries around these to protect what's important for you. So these are the three key things that I think will really go a long way to stopping gaslighting in your life. And it's important to flex this muscle of stopping gaslighting in your life, because if you stop it now, then you can understand it, see it, and know that you can stop it again in the future, because you're flexing that muscle of using your voice, that muscle of standing up for yourself, knowing what's right and doing something about it. And if you need more tips and more help, please reach out to us. We have both experienced this and we are here today. We are domestic violence survivor mentors. This is what we do. So please reach out to us. So hopefully those tips have helped you. And if you're watching the replay, again, let us know, have you used these any of these tips to actually help recognize gaslighting? Or have you done any of this, like implemented it in your life to help stop gaslighting in your life? Or is there anything else that you would like to share on how you've stopped gaslighting?
Thank you, Amy, for those tips. I added one last one to the list, which setting the boundary.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty much coupled with all of the statements that you said. Using your voice, standing up for yourself, telling what you believe is true. And as Amy said, it is difficult to do at first, and it might feel awkward. But just like learning how to do anything else, you have to have repetition of doing it. And it's like a muscle, like Amy said, once you build that muscle up, you can go into any situation and react the same way and react faster. So as Amy said, we've both been through it. We're more than willing to connect with folks. We are mentors of domestic abuse and survivors. So, we're more than happy to connect with anyone. So let's look at some points about what impacts are on society today. And so some impacts on society. So as we talked about, gaslighting is a way of control, and it makes the survivor start to believe they can't trust themselves. And they tend to end up having mental disorders in the way of anxiety, depression, trauma, low self-esteem. And all of these things manifest themselves in your everyday life, in your family, how you run the family, in your workplace of work, in your place of business. All of these things that you're feeling mentally and physically all show up in those different places. So it is very important for you to make sure that you are taking care of yourself and your health and your mental health. Because anxiety, depression, trauma, and low self-esteem are all things that will break you down, that will cause you to eventually, there will be physical manifestations of these things that you're going through emotionally. And that's the biggest impact on society, that the gaslighting creates the anxiety. As Amy said, she was hypervigilant. You're just completely, as her book says, walking on eggshells. It's the perfect term. And that's how the impact is on society. But as Amy just shared, there are ways that you can learn to overcome it and be aware of it and make a change.
Yeah, I definitely think in today's society, now more than ever, anxiety and depression is so prevalent. And I just don't even want to think how many people are being gaslit who don't realize, don't know about it, and therefore aren't going to do anything about it. Their mental health will continue to decline. So it is really important to stand up and do something about it.
It is.
Yeah, thank you. So now more than ever is the time to change. The time for change is now. So if you feel like this is happening to you, we encourage you. We are here to support you. Stand up for yourself. Know your values. Uphold these. Your self-worth is worth it. Your mental health is worth it. Everything that is important to you is worth you standing up for yourself. So we highly encourage you, and we are here for you. So now is the time for change. Don't wait. Don't think, oh, but next time they do it, I'll do something about it. And then, if that keeps happening, we want you to flex that muscle. Just try. Even practice it in your head. And then do it. Take action. It will be so empowering. So with this time for change, what I encourage you to do is go through this change. And what I mean by that is by taking action, one small step. Even if you have that thought in your head, you can see it and you know what you want to say, and then you have the courage to say it. That's one. And then the next time, do it again. And then do it again and keep doing it. And the more you're able to build up, you will feel empowered, but you will also start your transformation. Your transformation of inspiring yourself, knowing that you are worthy. You are good enough. And before you know it, your transformation has begun. And this is where the healing starts. Because if you are in this place, I bet you have been through a lot. You have had this happen not once, not twice, but I'm sure you've had it a lot. You've got a lot of baggage in your back from your past. You've been through a lot. So the more you take action, flex that muscle, then you can start your transformation and start your healing journey. And if you are ready now or in the future, I encourage you to reach out to us. We're in the Facebook group Healing Plus Empowerment Equals Freedom. And we are domestic violence survivor mentors who go under the name of the Freedom Mentor. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. The Freedom Mentor has its foundational program called Live Free, which I just love, because that's how you feel when you go through the healing program. So Live Free, the healing program, it really helps you get rid of any energetic blockages that you have. Blockages against other people and yourself. And by blockages, I mean like judgments, or you feel like you can't get past something, or you have a part of you that you feel like you've lost. So we work through these things and we use strategies and tools that I've learned from my mentors. I have invested thousands and thousands, you don't want to know how much I've spent on healing myself and developing myself, and have now been trained to teach these processes to others so we can help and serve others heal. So going through the Live Free program, we have weekly 1-hour sessions where we work on these processes. And then during the week, you have a task that actually builds up your self-worth, builds up your self-esteem, your confidence, your self-love. So we're working on the hard stuff, and you've got some really nice stuff to work through as well. So it's a beautiful balance between the two. So I highly encourage you, if you have any questions about the healing program, please get in touch, because we would love to see you transform. We have helped people all over the world. So I'm in Australia, for those who don't know, and connected with Dawnelle in America. And Dawnelle is one of many clients, and we now mentor people all over the world. So having that impact and helping people is huge for us, and it is even more so huge for the people who we help. So we would love to help you. So Dawnelle, just briefly, before we wrap up today, I would just like to ask you some questions. What was the highlight for you of going through the healing program?
The highlight for me is the feeling of being empowered. When I came into the program, every little thing made me cry because I felt like I couldn't do it. Every challenging task that Amy assigned, there were tears that went along with it. But as the tears shed, the layers pulled away, and I started to come into myself. I started to discover myself. I started to remove the blockages that were there, that were stopping me from finding who I was, knowing and standing on my own 2 feet, able to set my boundaries and know my values. So today, that program has springboarded me into my healing journey. And it was a great experience, and I would love to share it. We would love to share it with you, that same experience of living free.
So if you recall, back in the day, when we initially spoke about the program, do you recall what made you take action and join? What was your driving motivation?
My driving motivation is I just came out of my marriage and the tragic situation. I had 3 children to raise, and I needed to become that woman, that mom, that person that they could count on. And the only way I could get there is by changing how I viewed myself, establishing my self-worth, building my confidence, and then going out and running and changing and doing all these things that would bring self-care and for myself.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And you know, you need to do this for yourself so you can help other people. And I'm not just talking like being a mentor, but looking after your kids. Like, you know, the typical analogy is when the plane's going down, you have to put oxygen on yourself first before you can help others. So looking after yourself is so important, and recognizing that you do need to heal. You don't have to have gone through like 10 years of domestic violence. You know, perhaps it was 1 year. Like, it doesn't matter how long it is. The importance is for you to heal, for you to get help and really become empowered, become inspired to love life, to live life, to enjoy life, and have and achieve goals. This is where you're going to feel fulfilled and you're going to have a purpose in life that you absolutely love, like we do. So I invite you to join our healing program. If you're interested to know more about what it's like to be a survivor of domestic violence, if you're interested to know a day in the life of a victim, what we go through, how it feels in every situation, then I encourage you to buy my book. It's called My Life on Eggshells. I'll put a link in the comments. Also, if you're keen to join these conversations, our Facebook group is Healing Plus Empowerment Equals Freedom. Follow us on the socials under the Freedom Mentor. So we're on Instagram and Facebook, and join the monthly discussion. So we will be back at the end of, no, July is this month. We'll be back at the end of August for another edition of Developing Awareness EduSeries. And next month's topic is narcissism. So narcissism is quite prevalent and a reasonably popular sort of word that gets thrown around a lot, similar to gaslighting. So we're going to deep dive into narcissism next month. So stick around and we look forward to you joining us next month. Thanks very much for listening to us today. Really, really appreciate your presence and listening to this whole episode of Developing Awareness. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please let us know below. Comment, share your stories, share your thoughts. If you have any questions, please reach out and DM us. We would love to hear from you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you for joining. See you next EduSeries.